And as you go further and further down towards the west end, you'll see more and more Chinese owned buildings. This is Queensway Security. Now that's the Hajui building. Hajui is also a Chinese motorcycle store. Covered that in the last video that I did on China's global impact on Guyana. This is Orinoco Street, and that is a building that's changing the skyline. That's Aden by Best Western. It's the Best Western Hotel. It's all completed, and I've showed you that building in several videos. But here we are on Regent Street, and what we're showing you is, I probably should do a count of the number of new buildings that are actually now owned by Chinese merchants. And the reason why we're doing this analysis is because in recent times, Guyanese shoppers are beginning to complain about the impact of the influx of Chinese stores. This is Chinese from China, not Guyanese Chinese, right? So Chinese from China. A lot of these stores now are being bought out or bought up by Chinese. This one is Hongzhou Trading Company. It's now a Chinese-owned store. Not all of them. This is Smith's General Store. Fortune Trading. That's also now a Chinese merchant store. B&M Trading. That's Ideal Printery. It's one of the black-owned two now. This one is Colors. I think that one is also black-owned, and this 2J's General Store is black-owned. So now that's 4 that I know of. Four black-owned general stores. I'm not so sure who owns Hanson. So Hanson General Store may be black-owned, but we're going to confirm that, verify that in future. Now at the corner of Light Street in Regent Street, this building I believe is a hotel, or a hotel-like building, but it's Chinese-owned. So now this is a Chinese general store. And on the ground floor here at Light and Regent Street, this is also a Chinese shop, but there's also a paint shop in half of the building. And that paint shop, I think, is foreign owned. Harris Paints, I think, is owned by a black owner. But here is the Chinese store. Century Hardware, that's on Light Street, and above it seems like a hotel building. That's Chinese owned. We're going to talk about the architecture of these Chinese buildings as we go in future. So these are Chinese owned stores now. This is Gerlax or Sunny Trading. That's Chinese owned. They sell Chinese electronics. That's like knockoff Apple products. This is Young Lee store. That's also a Chinese store. They sell plumbing supplies and so on. On this side, this building has just been extended. It's now about 33% larger than it was. Regent Household Electronics. This is not a Chinese-owned store, at least not yet. But on this side, several of these. This is Carib Supermarket, that is Chinese-owned. Prosperous Hardware, I think that is also Chinese-owned. Hong Wee Trade, that's Chinese-owned. The Sino General Store, this large store here, Chinese-owned. Ashok's Variety Store, I think that's owned by Indians. Several of these smaller stores are also Chinese. So this one actually is, right, Chino store. That's Chinese owned. On this side, this is a Chinese-owned Zongda, right? Zongda, that's Chinese-owned. At this corner, right? This is not Chinese-owned. That's owned by Indian Guyanese. But at the intersection here, this is Light Street now. Last intersection was Albert Street. This one's Light Street. This building, Chinese-owned electrical store. All right, so walk in. I'm not certain who owns that one, but it isn't always open. Omani, this one is a Chinese electrical store. They sell clothes and shoes, and a lot of these are also Chinese stores if you shop there. On this side, you also see there are more Chinese stores. This one is also, and this one, Chinese stores. So the point is, I've lost count, but as you go down the shop, as you go down Regent Street, you will find an increasing number of Chinese stores replacing what was traditionally Guyanese owned, either Indian or Afro-Guyanese owned stores. And that's actually not a bad thing in the sense that the Chinese do bring relatively reasonably priced items, although the quality is sometimes suspect. Right, Kanai's Electrical, that's a well-known Guyanese electrical shop. That's been there as the second outlet that they have. But on this corner, Cumming Street, that's a Chinese-owned store now. And on the other side of the intersection, this store, Samtronics is Indian, but right next door, the other half of the building is a Chinese store. Yuna, this is a Chinese store. Now it used to be an American shop over here, but now it's Yuna Trading, right? That's a Chinese store. This one is a Chinese store. Now coming up here, okay, another Chinese store. Household Plus, I think that one is black owned. So that's where we're up to five black owned stores on Regent Street so far. I'm saying the last time I counted it was 7, and I'm not so sure that has changed. Hongda Hardware Trading, that's a Chinese store. Rong Xing Mao Zi, that's a Chinese store, next door to Fullworks. Right? That's the Chinese stores, both of them Chinese stores. And to come up to this intersection, that's the Border Market, Bounty Supermarket. Right, Bounty Supermarket is a well-known supermarket chain in Guyana, but this is Border Market. And here is Lime Street, right? Lime Street on a Friday morning. Remember, it's just before 8 a.m., so a lot of these places are now beginning to open. That's the old Border Market post office, still operating, although I think a lot of people don't really use snail mail anymore. But as you go down Regent Street, the pattern I'm describing is repeated. And a lot of the new buildings, those slender buildings, I commented in past videos on the form factor of these buildings. A lot of these new buildings, like the one here at the corner, this new green building, that's a Chinese merchant who's built this structure, this building. Right, a lot of these new buildings, like this one